Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel, I See Knits. My name is Sophie, and here I like to talk about knitting. Third episode of the podcast. Middle of March, close to the end, close to spring. I actually thought I would do a spring knits today, but then it is so dreadfully cold out there still that I decided I would wait for the next one to talk about my plans for spring. Today, I'll just do a regular episode, which is I'll talk about a finished object, talk about my current projects, which are going very, very well. And then maybe, no, I don't know if I'll have time because I have a lot to say. I actually have a lot to say. Without further ado, let's start with the finished object of today, which is the Lacey Loop Tee by Other Loops. I have it here with me. It is It is quite large. It is meant to be worn with 25 to 30 centimeters of positive ease. This is a very simple tee with a tiny eyelet slash lace pattern. Very, very simple, very, very flowy, which is what I was looking like after knitting the Dido tee, which was more of a dressy tee. I wanted something that would look just a tiny bit more casual, but still could be dressed up or down, you know? So I ended up finding this pattern on Ravelry and I really, really loved the look. The recommended yarn for this is either Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, holding two strands together, or Laine du Nord Luxury Silk, which is like a DK worsted weight silk. So for this one, you hold only one strand. And I decided I would try the luxury silk actually because I felt like I would have more occasions to try knitting for olive pure silk in the future. So I decided I'd do a luxury silk from Laine du Nord. And I have a bit to say about that yarn later. This pattern kind of pretty straightforward, right? It's a T, so how hard can it be? The lace pattern is charted. It is, I want to say, like 12 rows total. No, it's 16 rows total. I lied. 16 rows. It's very, very easy to memorize. I mean, you glance at the chart once and then you figure it out. I feel like you wouldn't even really need a chart. You could just like look at the simple pictures and figure out the pattern. But I get why um, we get a chart though. The back, you work the back piece first. So what you do is you actually cast on all the stitches, including the shoulders, the back of the neckline, and then you just work short rows. I really like that way because it doesn't give like ridges, because when I noticed that when I work my back pieces using, just casting on for the back of the neckline and then casting on stitches every side, I get those kind of like stairs on my back piece, and when I pick up stitches for the shoulders, it doesn't look as good. So I really liked this way of doing it actually. You work the back piece, you increase for the armholes, and then you pick up stitches for both shoulder by for one shoulder at a time. Obviously, you work one shoulder, the other, join in the front, work the front piece, join under the arms, and then you work in the round. The sleeves are picked up and worked in the round too. They are very short, so it is. I want to say this is a fast knit, but honestly, this was not that fast. This actually took me a long time, and it took me a long time because I also made a mistake and I had to unravel quite a bit of it. Because you see what there is at the bottom part here, about like 8 centimeters of ribbing. And just before you do the ribbing, you actually have to do a repeat of the eyelet pattern. And when I was knitting this, I was so excited to be this close to finishing it that I forgot. I had to do an eyelet repeat before I started the ribbing. So I knit my garter strip and then I got right into the ribbing. And I figured it out as I was done with the ribbing part. So I knit the whole 8 centimeters of ribbing. And then I looked at the pattern and saw that I had forgotten the eyelets. And I was pissed off. And I thought about leaving it as is. I was like, do I really care? And then I really cared. I looked at the pictures. I was like, no, I really, really like the just this little detail of the eyelets before the ribbing. So I unraveled all of my ribbing, did the eyelet row, and then did all my ribbing again. And one by one rib is more time consuming for me because of the way I knit, which I'm comfortable with it, but it's just it's it takes a lot more time. So I did all of the ribbing twice. Um Overall though, the pattern itself, it goes kind of quick. I don't know why I did that, because the pattern, the eyelet pattern, calls for, you knit two together, yarn over, knit two together, yarn over the whole row. And then the row after, you knit all stitches, and then the third row you do another knit two together, yarn over. And I don't know, I had almost just finished my shorty, which uses the same kind of design, right? But the shorty actually has you do a knit two together, yarn over, and then on the next row you do a yarn over, slip slip knit. So I thought, I'm just gonna do that for this Lacey Loop Tee instead of doing like knit two togethers all the way. And slip slip knit takes so much longer. So I don't know why I did that, because it doesn't look any different than the sample picture. So I don't know. I kind of like, I guess I wanted to torture myself a bit knitting this. But overall, I feel like if you do it the intended way and you don't have to unravel and then reknit your thing, it is kind of a fast knit, even though it has a lot of negative ease. The gauge is pretty wide, so you still don't have so many stitches to knit, right? Because this calls for a 20 stitch gauge in 10 centimeters. So it is really not that bad. I actually did gauge swatch for this, and I did a correct gauge swatch. I swatched the correct way. Yay me, I learned from my mistakes. So what I did was I knit like a whole square of stockinette, and I blocked it, and then I measured my gauge and I got gauge. Yay, I got gauge for this. And then when I started knitting, my grip got a little looser, and then so did my gauge. So I am actually a bit off on the finished piece. I measured and I have like 18 and a half, 19 stitches for 10 centimeters, which I really, really don't mind. The piece itself is made to be really drapey and loose, so I don't care. But I gauge swatch correctly, and I was so scared of not having enough yarn that I actually unraveled my gauge swatch, and I ended up having way too much yarn. So I could have just left my gauge swatch as is. Anyways, uh do I have anything else to say about this pattern? I don't have a lot to say about this pattern. I have a lot to say about this yarn though. So this is Luxury Silk from Lens Nord. This yarn is so expensive. This yarn, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, oh yeah, I really want to try this. And yeah, sure. And I could afford it. So I figured, you know what? This is $25 for a single ball. And one ball has 135 meters of yarn in it. So this is a very expensive tee. This was almost like $300. Uh, It is a nice weird yarn. I'll say it like that. I have a love hate relationship with this yarn, and I am still not sure if the fact that I did not enjoy knitting this tee so much is thanks to the pattern or the yarn. And I think it's a bit of both. Because I at one point I was a bit bored when I was knitting this, and the pattern itself is very very simple. So I guess that's why I got kind of bored. But then this yarn is not so fun to work with. It is a chainette construction, so it is kind of a like, I don't know if you can see it. If I can kind of show it here, I don't know. I don't know if you can see it, but this is a chainette construction, so it's worked like a tube of silk. And this is the same type of raw silk, right, that Knitting for Olive Pure Silk uses. So if you are familiar with this, then it is kind of the same texture. It is a bit hard on the hands because it is, I didn't find it so slippery, and I knit this on metal needles. So I don't know, but I do agree that at first, at least, my grip was very, very tight on my needles, and then I relaxed and it got better. And it is, as I knit this, it was rough on my fingers, the way I hold my yarn. And I kind of got like, I had to, protect my fingers because it was irritating. But when I blocked my swatch, though, I knew that this changed a lot with blocking, and it did. My swatch got so much softer and so much drapier. So as you knit it, even though it looks kind of weird, do not fret. This will block out. And once blocked and washed, it is amazing. It feels really, really great. The thing is, though, the chainette constructions was really, really nice when it came to joining a new ball of yarn, because I could do a Russian join very easily. So less ends to weave in, which I was really, really happy about. But this also makes it, silk is kind of splitty. This is splitty while also being very, very rigid and hard to split. I don't know how to say it, but if you are not very, very careful where you put your needle, you actually end up splitting the tube, and then you kind of have to like fiddle with it. So this made for, I think this contributed to making this tee more time consuming to knit. And it is so expensive. And I actually have 2 balls of it left. So I don't know what I did to have so much left, because I bought the recommended quantity for size medium, and I have like one whole ball and then another, yeah, I have 2 whole balls left of it. So I have no clue what I'm going to do with like 300, a bit less than 300 meters of this. I don't know. I have to find a pattern. I was thinking maybe hair accessories. That would be nice, but like I have no clue. So they are sitting in my tiny stash for now while I figure out what to do with them. So I don't know. I don't think I recommend this yarn. First of all, because of the price. It's really really expensive, and it's not that fun to work with. But it is really really fun to wear though. I don't know. It drapes so well. I'm gonna put this on later, and you'll see what I mean. The finished object, though, actually, I'm gonna put it on right now and talk about the finished object while I have it on. So give me just a minute. All right, so I have put it on. As you can see, this is a very, very drapey tee. That was what I was looking for because I was knitting this in the summer, and I love wearing like looser t-shirts in the summer because I get very sweaty. So here's what it looks like. It is very, very flowy. I love the way this looks. Honestly, I really love the way this looks. I love the little details. This row of eyelets just before the ribbing is so cute. It looks very, very cute. The sleeves, what I did for the sleeves is that usually you start with like just a row of stockinette before, and I decided I'd start it with a garter strip. Also, I did changes to the neckline because the original neckline in the pattern calls for one by one ribbing, which I thought didn't really fit the general vibe of the tee. So what I did was I did an I cord neckline, and I wanted it. I My I cord neckline is a bit tight. I could unravel it and knit it a tiny bit looser, because I wanted something that was more open, kind of like the rest of the tee, which is very, very loose. So I wanted the neckline not to pull in too much. And I did not want to do an Italian bind off for the neckline. I did just a regular bind off for the rest. And I felt like doing a bind off, a sewn bind off with this yarn would have been a pain in my ass. So I decided I would just do an I cord. I would just do an I cord neckline, and I think it fits the tee better. And also, I had never done an applied I cord before, so that was a nice challenge for me. So there are not a lot of details on this. There are no visible seam really. This is the part where you pick up for the shoulders, so you can see how it looks. And the seaming is like, well, not the seaming, but like it sits in the back here. So this is a very, very simple tee that feels luxurious when you wear it because of the material. I would I don't know what I would substitute this yarn for, actually. I think this would look very, very good, actually, probably as good using two strands of knitting for olive pure silk. But, anyways, here it is. I really, really, this is actually, and this is last thing I'm going to say about this is kind of warm. I knit this for summer and I cannot wear this in the summer. This is so warm. This is more of like this is more of a spring tee or maybe fall, but I cannot wear this in the height of summer because I suffocate in it. So maybe think about it. If you have very hot summers, this isn't this isn't made for this, because the fabric, as drapey as it is kind of thick because of the construction of the yarn. So think about it. I figured I'll just wear this till the end of the podcast episode. My current projects. So, I know last time I said a lot of things last time. I said that I would take a break from my Ignat cardigan and start with my cardi jumper because I wanted to knit the cardi jumper in the plane, and I still that's kind of what I did. I haven't took the plane yet, but that was the original plan, anyways. But then I figured, I'm gonna finish the body of the Ignat cardigan. So I did. I finished the body. Here it is. This took, God, this button band. I did not like knitting this button band. Well, no, I did not like knitting the last part of the button band, because what you do actually is once you're finished with the brioche, you put the stitches from the button band on hold and then you knit the whole ribbing. And after that, you pick up stitches next to your ribbing and you knit the rest of the button band on smaller needles. And that part, God, it was a pain in my ass. It was a pain in my ass. But I got through. I got through, and I am now weaving in some of my ends on this. Also, what happened? I don't know. I usually do a tubular bind off on my one by one rib, and I have never done before the setup rows, for Italian bind off, like the two rows of double knitting. I never really saw any need for it. And then I decided, I'm not gonna do a setup rows for my ribbing, because you bind off the button band and your ribbing at the same time. And I figured, there's no need to do the setup rows for the ribbing part. And I started my bind off. And then my button band was not the same height as my bind off. So, and I was about like, I want to say I was about like 15 centimeters in my bind off. I unraveled my bind off, and then I had to do setup rows just for the ribbing part. And the pattern doesn't call for this. You have to do the setup rows for the whole thing, including the button band. And my button band was already a bit long, just like a tiny bit longer than my ribbing. And I picked up the correct amount of stitches and I used the correct size needle. So I don't know. So I had to do actually 4 rows of double knitting just on my ribbing. And then, but I'd already cut my yarn, so I had to join new yarn. And then I have like a bunch of ends to weave in for this. And then I did my Italian bind off. And I'm happy I did it in the end because it looks a lot tidier and it is very, very seamless. It looks very good. So I'm happy I did it, but undoing an Italian bind off on very dark yarn using mohair, I do not recommend this. I do not recommend this. But with all of this, I got done with the body. And then I started my cardi jumper, which is in my bag, figuring, I'll start this and then I'll join under the arms and then I can knit in the plane. And I joined under the arms and my god, this after knitting so much brioche is such a fast knit. I'm already I have an elastic on it. I've started on the sleeve. So I am about a quarter done with one sleeve and I'm so sorry. This is a mess. Um, I have a lot done on the body as well. So I decided and the fabric, I really like the fabric that I am getting. I don't know if you can see because the yarns are not exactly the same color because I'm holding these two yarns together. So one of them is a bit lighter. I get a nice little color switch, in my fabric. So this looks really, really good, actually. I'm very happy about how this is turning out. So yeah, this went by so fast that I actually decided I would start knitting the sleeves on my Ignite cardigan. And the sleeves are supposed to be done in the round on this cardigan. And I had seen on Ravelry that a few people had knit theirs flat because their gauge was different in the round from the brioche that was knit flat on the body. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have this problem. I started knitting. I picked up the stitches for the sleeve. I knit about, I want to say like an inch and a half of brioche in the round before realizing how miserable this was making me. Uh, and I feel like a hobby is supposed to be fun, And I was not having fun at all knitting this brioche in the round. It was fiddly. And I I already don't love knitting sleeves because I find them like weird to knit. When you knit attached sleeves in the round and then you're done with the rest of the sweater and then you just have to like carry the whole sweater and it's super heavy and you have to twist it so much because the round is so short. I do not love working sleeves. And I started knitting this and I was like, no, I am not having fun. So I figured, why not learn a new technique and knit my sleeve flat? So that's what I did. I unraveled my whole sleeve and I have a weird ribbing problem that I'm gonna talk about maybe in another video. But my ribbing in the round would have been so much different than my ribbing flat. So I figured I think it's better if I knit my sleeve flat. So I cast on, as you can see, I'm done with one sleeve. I only have one sleeve left. I cast on stitches for my sleeve, and oh my god, this went by so fast. Working brioche, I know I complained about working brioche last time, um, but this is so fun. I love working brioche now. Once you get the gist of it, and once you get kind of like into the flow of knitting, it is really really nice to knit. So I am done with one sleeve. I only need to, well, as you can see, I need to weave in the ends on the sleeve, and then I need to do the other. And I decided that the second sleeve is what I would knit on the plane because, it's much more portable than a whole cardigan. So I figured, a sleeve, what a great project to bring on the plane. So that's what I'm going to do. Also, I ran into another problem with this cardigan. God, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna run out of yarn. And I don't know what I did wrong because I ordered the right quantity, so I don't know. I don't know what happened. I'm gonna run out of yarn, and a ridiculous amount of yarn. I think I'm gonna run out of like 10 meters of yarn. So I had to buy another ball of yarn of the tin pure Ghent. And you know what's funny is I bought this yarn from a shop in Toronto. And I figured, I know that a couple of shops in Montreal or near Montreal have the Tin Pier Gand in inventory. So I went there and they did not have this colorway. And I looked all over and I could not find anywhere that had this particular colorway other than the knitting shop in Toronto. So I had to buy one single $9 ball of yarn from a shop in Toronto and paying $12 of shipping because if I wanted free shipping I had to order for like $200 and I did not have $200 worth of stuff to order, so I paid $12 of shipping for one single ball of yarn that I am going to use probably about 10 meters off. So um I am sad, but uh shit happens, right? It happens. I'm gonna get it done. I am very, very excited to blog this because I know that this yarn softens so much with blocking, and I am very excited to try it on with the sleeves. Uh, and my cardi jumper, I think I'm gonna get done with the sleeve before I leave next week. And then after that, I'm just gonna have one other sleeve and then the rest of the body. I'm gonna be playing Yarn Chicken for the cardi jumper because I bought only 3 balls of alpaca one, which is 1,200 meters, and the size I'm knitting calls for 1,250 meters of yarn. But I am planning on making it a bit cropped, so I am hoping I don't have to buy another ball of this because this is 400 meters. What am I gonna do with the leftover, right? That's that is the thing that I do not like when I knit. The leftover. I never know what to do with the leftover yarn that I have. Like, I get it. It's better, and sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Sometimes you need only 10 meters on a single ball of yarn, but I hate having so much yarn left over and not knowing what to do with it, and then having to find a project for it when I'm not really inspired. And I don't want to have a huge stash of yarn. First of all, because I don't have the space in my home for a huge stash of yarn. And second of all, because I am deathly afraid of moths in my stash. So I keep all of my projects, all of my yarn in plastic bags, in a bin, and sometimes in the freezer as well. So I'm pretty anal about this, and I feel like having a huge stash of yarn would just feed my anxiety about moths, because I did have some moths like a year ago, and I got crazy about it. Cleaned up my whole house, like got rid of a bunch of stuff, and that was like right at the moment I had started knitting. So I was lucky I didn't have like any, none of my knits were affected, but I got very, very scared, and I am still very, very scared of this. So I don't know. I don't like having so much leftover. I think what I'm gonna do is like try finding some accessories in it with like the leftover that I have from my last few projects, but I don't have so many accessories that I want out of wool. So I don't know what to do with it. Maybe like toys, maybe like little plushies. I do love plushies, but I don't know. Who knows? I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk about future projects in this podcast episode. I'm going to leave it as it is, and do a separate episode where I'm going to talk about my projects, all of my projects planned for the spring and summer for next podcast episode. So yeah, let me know if you have ever knit with Lendunal luxury silk. What did you think about it? And what do you do with your leftovers when you have like one single ball of yarn left over? What do you do with it? Like you just let it sit until it just, what do you do with it? What do you do with your please give me inspiration to do something with my leftovers. And hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.